A lot of people have been asking if I've completely abandoned the frog strategy in favor of Altergeist, and while I might have done that competitively, I actually think that there is a frog list that is fairly viable, and basically you're sort of taking advantage of two main things that frogs have that Altergeist don't. The first is that not only can you play all the Floodgates that Altergeist play, like Rivalry of Warlords and Anti-Spell and Imperial Order, but you can also play Goes and Match, and that card is really good. It's actually pretty much the same thing as Rivalry of Warlords, which basically means you have 6 copies of this card that you can draw and auto-win a lot of different matchups, and Altergeist can't play that, so that's one advantage. And then the other advantage is obviously that frogs have access to Totally Awesome, whereas Altergeist don't. Altergeist have a lot of good main deck monsters, but not a lot of good extra deck monsters, whereas frogs have not very good main deck monsters, but a lot of really good extra deck monsters. So without further ado, we're going to get in this profile. I do want to say real quick here, you might have noticed that it looks a little different. I recently purchased the same camera that Team Samurai used for a while until he dropped it into a lake, and then also the one that Nim Nim uses. I figured that I would do this because, not that I dislike the current camera that I've been using, which is just my cell phone camera, but it definitely, like, it doesn't look good if I don't have the flash on, and when I have the flash on, a lot of times it looks really weird when I do it on, like, higher rarity cards. They kind of, you have this, like, huge spotlight on them, so I'm just trying out this camera. I don't know if I'm going to keep it or not, but I just wanted to test out a couple things. So if it looks a little off, please give me some feedback, because I'm just trying to mess around with the settings and see what works. I've kind of talked to Nim Nim about it a little bit, but I'm not really that good with cameras. So anyway, let's jump right in. The first card, obviously 3 copies of Swap Frog, the good swappy boy. No, this card's really powerful though. It still is like really good. It's not like as good or impactful just by itself as like a lot of the Altergeist cards, but it definitely, when you have another water card, I mean, Totally Awesome is just like really powerful. So we want to play Swap Frog obviously, and then the Dupe Frog. Good old Dupe Frog, who I now am just as educated as Dupe Frog, because we both have college degrees. And then 2 copies of Ronin Totem. This is actually it for the monsters. I didn't want to play any hand traps. I should mention that I don't actually have Card of Demise for this deck, because I never picked up Card of Demises, but this is more just kind of like a fun frog profile that you can play. I don't know, I don't really like Card of Demise, just like as a card. I feel like it really screws you up, and it's like only good turn 1, because if you already have Toad, like you can't use it. If you have like, if you want to summon Paleos from the grave, you can't use it. It's like not that great. But anyway, these are just like the only 8 real monsters. And the good news is you only need to draw like 1 of those and like a Paleo, and you're like good to go. For the traps, which is the rest of the decks, we have 32 trap cards here. 3 copies of Paleozoic Olenoids. I don't know why they didn't reprint this card as super rare. I like posted on Twitter that like, I just remembered that this card is the only Paleo that hasn't been printed as super rare, which is just crazy. But this is like the best one right now. I mentioned before that like one of the issues with Paleos is that the deck is only as good as the main deck Paleo monsters. And what I mean by that is that while this card's really powerful right now, Paleozoic Canadia, sorry, I've been so used to saying Candina. Paleozoic Canadia is not so hot. It's not very good against Trickstar Sky Strikers. It's really bad against Goki. You still have to play 3 copies, because like it's the only card you can play, because the other Paleos just aren't that good. So that's like one of the main issues with this deck right now, is that the second best Paleo card just in the game isn't very good at this format. Hopefully something changes, and I think if you play this deck like Locals or something, you probably have a better chance. But yeah, this card is not very good against top decks, which is like a huge issue for this deck. Really all you can do is, I guess, like chain this if they actually have Lycris or something, and you can flip like a Lilybell face down. But it doesn't work against like any Link monsters, so that really sucks. So you kind of have to play around with this guy. Maybe you can just like cut him. I don't know. I saw like a Dinosaur Paleozoic list that like didn't play this card at all. Just played 3 copies of this and 3 Marilla, but I don't know. It's just weird. And then lastly, 1 copy of Dynamiscus. This card's pretty good right now. It's not like the best Paleozoic, and I've cut it from a lot of my lists, but because Canadia is so bad right now, I feel that you have to play like 1 copy of this guy. And it's like, it's not that I hate this card, it's just like, it's really good to search off of the Opabania, and it still is, like it always has been, but right now in particular, it's really good, so I like the card a lot. I'm not like, I don't hate that card, it's just not my favorite. For the Floodgates, so like I said, we can play 3 copies of Goes and Match, which is everyone can only control the same attribute. It's worth mentioning that like all the relevant extra deck monsters and main deck monsters, well, every main deck monster, but all the relevant extra deck monsters, they're all aqua waters. All the Paleos are all that, all the frogs are that, the Toad is that, everything's aqua water, so that's like really good. So Goes and Match is perfectly fine. With that, we have Rivalry. There's honestly not a huge difference between between these cards that actually, if anything, Goes and Match is better. It's just that Rivalry is what I play in Altergeist because they're all spellcasters. But against like a lot of decks, Goes and Match will do the exact same thing, if not work even better, which is really cool. So I like that a lot. Like Goes and Match in particular is sort of better against Scapegoat, depending on when you do that, because like there's a lot of I found sometimes the Rivalry gets weird because there are several Cyberse extra deck monsters that your opponent can make, so they can just do that, where with Goes and Match they can't do it. So that's really good. And then 3 copies of good old Anti-Spell Fragrance. This card isn't fantastic, but it is good at slowing the game down. That's kind of what we want to do. And then 1 copy of Order. I keep mentioning that like Order isn't like the best card ever. It is really good at making your opponent scoop though, and I think that's like worth it. Like a lot of times that I flip this card in tournaments with like Altergeist, my hand hasn't been that good, but people just don't want to play against this card, so they just like scoop, and that's fun. So if you draw any of those cards, you're in a good spot. You really just want to draw like a Paleo, a Frog, and then any of those Floodgates, and then you can hopefully win. Our draw power, because I didn't have demises, and I actually think this card's fine. We're playing 3 copies of Reckless Greed. Yeah, it feels good to play this card again. I've had these Super Rists sitting around for a while, but I think that this card is just good in general. Once again, I'm pretty sure that the actual Paleozoic guy that topped the European WCQ, pretty sure he was playing Reckless Greeds, but yeah, this card's good. It's good because it triggers the Paleos. And once your deck gets going, you actually don't really need your draw phase too much, so that card's fine. I've actually considered playing that Altergeist as well. 3 copies of Solemn Strike. It strikes Solemns. One thing with this deck that I found testing it compared to Altergeist is that effect negation is a lot harder to come by. You don't have Protocol just negating everything for you, so you honestly, these Solemn Strikes, you really have to save them for the right time. I'd say in a lot of cases you're saving these for hand traps. That's really important. Ash Blossom is one of the most annoying things to happen to Totally Awesome. Ghost Ogre wasn't really that bad. A lot of times that wasn't that big a deal, but Ash Blossom on Toad is definitely like really annoying, so definitely got to save the strikes for that. Luckily, you don't have like Desires or anything that can get Ashed and you just lose the game. I'm playing 3 Infinite Permanents, and I don't know, like this card, I keep going back and forth on it. I know in the Altergeist profile that I posted at the end of the WCQ, that like got my invite with or whatever, I wasn't even playing this card in the main deck at all, and I just deciding it, but Gokis have like really come into popularity. They kind of came out of nowhere, actually. Like heading up into the WCQ, they were like technically a second best deck, but only kind of by default, which was kind of a weird situation. But I think right now they're like without a doubt the best, or maybe even the best deck. They're kind of tied for it. Trickstar Skystrikers had a little bit more tops at the American WCQ, or the North American WCQ, where I think Gokis actually had more tops at the European WCQ, which is kind of interesting. Although that's like their format's a little different because they don't have Link Rebos. So that's kind of weird. Anyway, this card's really good against Goki. It's not even that bad against Trickstar Skystrikers. It's like, it's not the best. The way that I'm looking at it is that this deck actually does have a better Trickstar matchup, just because Toad is really good against Trickstars. So I'm willing to play a card like this that's bad against Trickstars, because the Goki matchup for this deck is a lot harder because you don't have Multi-Faker summoning Kieran. But it's still like an okay card. And then we have 2 Torrential Tribute. It's good if you need to slow down the game. Once again, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to slow down the game so we can draw some frogs and kill our opponent. Totally Awesome plus 3 or 4 back row. Even Toad plus 2 back row tends to just win you the game. People just don't know how to play around Toad. But anyway, this card works well with Dupe Frog. That's a really cool combo. Otherwise, you can just do it to like blow up the whole board. We are playing 2 copies of Mind Crush. It's kind of risky depending on, like, because we're not playing a lot of cards that sit in our hand, but it is a good card, and it's like one of your only outs to evenly match, so I wanted to play it just as like an out to that. Yeah, they're perfectly fine though. You can probably cut those for like another tech choice if you want, depending on your like local metagame, but I like Mind Crush a lot, so. And then the last card, man, I love this card. I think I should just play this in Altergeist. This happens to be one of the best outs to Trickstar Light Stage, and it's kind of weird because you wouldn't think that. But basically what happens is like they hit this with Light Stage, and then you don't chain it, and then your opponent sets Scapegoat or Reincarnation and ends their turn, and then you just Heavy Storm Duster them in the end phase because you're forced to activate it, and that is like a complete blowout. That's actually like insane. That was something that, I mean, I kind of knew about that, but Jeff Jones and Max Reynolds both played 3 copies of this card in their side deck, which they got to top 64 of the NAWCQ with Trickstar Skystrikers, because they said they were just playing 3 of this, and they were just like, yeah, your opponent just Light Stage it, you just sit there, blow up both their back row in the end phase, and it's broken. So in this deck as well, you can activate the Paleo effects, so I thought it was pretty good. And that's it for the main deck. It's just 40 cards, the 8 monsters, and then 32 trap cards. If you like trap cards, this is going to be the deck for you. For the extra deck, the only card that really matters is totally awesome. We're playing 3 of it, obviously. The card's broken. The cards that come up sometimes, we have Opabania. In this build, we are playing 7 Paleozoics as opposed to the 6 that I usually play. So you actually have more opportunities to use this card. And then 1 copy of this guy. He's a little tricky to summon in this deck, if I'm being completely honest. You just don't have that much summoning power, but he's really good when he comes out just because he can like board control and stuff, whereas a lot of the other cards are really small. So he's cool. This is something you can't summon if you have Gozen or Rivalry, but I like Sky Cavalry a lot. I think this card's really cool. It's a good out to the random things that you wouldn't be able to out normal ways, so I like that card. You're not always going to draw the Rivalry, you're not always going to draw the Gozen, they're not always going to survive either. And then for the links, we have 2 copies of Mistar Boy. Super, super, super important. Maybe I could even play 3, but I don't have 3 super rares, so I guess we're not playing it. But yeah, this card's just super important because it gets towed to 2,700 attack points. If you get another one on the board, it's up to 3,200, which is just really unfair. And this is like the main way that you actually kill your opponent, which is something that Alter guys can struggle with. This deck, not so much. And then for the rest, we have, like I said, you're not always going to have Gozen, you're not always going to have Rivalry. So we have Nightmare Cerberus, Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Unicorn, and Nightmare Griffin. These are just sort of utility link monsters. I actually really have started liking Unicorn a lot. Obviously, I've been playing the Dark World Danger deck on live stream the past couple weeks. Well, I guess like week and a half or whatever, and Unicorn is like the one that I find comes up the most. It's just so versatile. Yeah, it takes like 1 more guy to make, but these cards are just so powerful. If you don't want to play all the Floodgates, you can play like Scapegoat and stuff, and you make these guys a lot more, but I'm just playing those the way that is. I think if you're going to play stuff like Scapegoat and Eater Millions like I used to play the deck, I think you're probably just better off playing Altergeist. Really like what you're trying to leverage in this strategy is Toad and Gozen Match, and if you play those cards, I mean, you can obviously still summon Toad, but you can't really resolve Scapegoat with Gozen Match or Rivalry on the board. Lastly, Triple Burst Dragon, super important. This deck really, like I said earlier with the protocol, with the deck not having protocol thing, you have a really, really hard time dealing with Sky Striker Ray. Not everyone is playing that deck anymore. Most people are just playing the Trickstar Sky Strikers, which doesn't play Ray. But if they are playing the pure Sky Striker list, you have like no outs to their Ray in Grave, and it's just really hard to deal with. So Triple Burst Dragon gets in there. And the last card, Borlo Dragon. It's really hard playing any deck right now without teching in, well, it's not really a tech, but without playing 1 copy of Borlo, simply because like it's just out to everything. Like outs all the crazy nightmare boards pretty much. Like a lot of times if you like stop your opponent, which like if you're side decking Reaper and you Reaper Isolde or something, and you stop your opponent and they end with like Goblin, Cerberus, and Phoenix, so their cards can't be targeted, destroyed, or destroyed by battle. How do you out that? Well, you just summon Borlo Dragon and get in there. It's really good. So that's why you got to play that guy. Anyway, though, that is going to wrap up this deck profile. I just try to play cards of all sorts of rarities. Got to let the camera focus there. I got to get used to that. I just want to play as many cards as possible in different rarities so we can kind of see how they look on camera. Maybe I have to record earlier, maybe I have to record later. Let me know how it looks if you notice a difference. I think even just looking through the screen right now, I notice a huge difference. It's pretty annoying having that huge spotlight in the middle of every single card, especially when you're looking at like ultimate rares and stuff. But yeah, I'll see you later. Thank you so much for watching. This was Frog Deck Profile number 69. I'll see you later. Bye.